everyone. Yeah, you
Hello.
are here. Yeah, folks, you are here for the DevOps panel discussion. So yeah, welcome. We can start by introducing ourselves, I think. Yeah, and we also have to admit that I think each of us might have met each other at some conferences, but this is like another time that we got put together and have a panel discussion. So yeah, and it
Can I hear ducks?
I'm sorry, actually, this is morning time for me, like 6 o'clock or something, and the geese are outside.
Geese?
Yeah,
Wow, that's fantastic. So Mary, where are you? Where have you got geese?
Sure. I'm based in Chicago, and actually, I just came back from Europe last week. I was at JCon, the last thing, and also DevOps UK before that, and then also India too. So I was gone from home for a month, but I just got home, and so yesterday I was also on the panel, but for AI and software development. But now I'm on DevOps but bright and early. Today, not as early, but still, it's kind of early, like 6 o'clock or something. So yeah. Yeah. So I'll finish. So I've been doing mostly developer advocacy for the past 6 years. So I was with DataStax last, but I'm transitioning now to become an AI practice lead for a consulting firm that's based in Ohio. So I'll be starting that next week. And anyway, myself, though, I came from more of an application development background. So I was a developer for over 20 years, primarily in Java, but then also getting into open source, web, some DevOps and cloud and all of these things. So so that's kind of quickly about me. And I'm also an active community organizer. I lead the Chicago Java Users Group. And also there's an AI camp in Chicago. I'm the chapter co-lead. Yeah, so that's kind of the quick summary about me. So, and also the geese. So every morning they make a lot of noise.
That's your early morning wake up call.
Yes, exactly.
Max, do you want to chicken? Yeah, well, in former times I had chickens. I didn't have a chicken. My neighbor had the chicken and the rooster, but he was luckily not a morning guy. He starts making his noises at 11 or so. So he was like all day long having the weekend calls. But besides that, I'm Max. I'm the founder of Liquid Reply. We're focusing on platform engineering, building internal developer platforms, doing some FinOps, and develop a couple of open source tools or help incubating open source tools whenever organizations have an idea of doing something, but they don't know how to start it or where to find developer resources to shortly incubate it until it's up and running. Besides that, I always call myself a technology advisor. Most of the time in the cloud native space, because that's what I'm doing since the last 5-6 years. But I have a very broad interest and participate in a couple of communities and do a lot of open source work. So I'm part of the CNCF Ambassador program, or also from the Linux Foundation Europe Advisory Board, being there and member from the first day, and help that to shape a little bit the direction of open source from a Linux Foundation perspective, and all the organizations taking part in that.
That sounds really interesting. Ron Ekins, I'm based in the UK. For me, that side, it's grey and it's damp and it's wet and it's a very dull day. I've got no geese making noises outside. I haven't got that going on. I've had quite a long career in technology now. I started as a developer in the 90s. Started as a COBOL developer, and then picked up operating systems experiences, Unix administrator, Solaris administrator, Deck Unix as well, and Linux. And from there, I got the chance to become a data professional. So I started the journey working with databases, originally Supra and Ingres. Supra was a network database, Ingres was a relational database, and then from there migrated to Oracle. And I've been working with Oracle technology 30 years. It's stead me well. So mainly Oracle and Linux. I'm part of an Oracle community program called ACE. So in Microsoft, you have MVPs, VMware has vExperts, Oracle has ACEs. So Oracle has 3 tiers of ACEs: ACE Associate, ACE Professional, and ACE Director. About 700 ACEs globally, and I'm in this top tier of ACE Director. There's about 70 of those. So I'm in a very small group of people, and it's fantastic for me, my company I work for, and for my customers, because I get to engage with Oracle product managers directly and go and speak about Oracle technology at conferences like this one. So my day job, I'm a director of field solution architecture for a storage vendor called Pure Storage. So today, my job really is advising organizations about data management, data governance, data security, and how they can use modern ways of working to protect their data. Ransomware being and cybersecurity being big trends in our industry at the moment. Really fortunate that throughout my career, working with data in highly regulated environments, so mainly defence and aerospace, before I worked for a vendor, and excited to share. Really, last week I got my third US patent granted. So I've got three patents granted around data protection and security. One of those in containers. So I work with Kubernetes in the container space as well, but really about data protection everywhere and how it's done with storage. And I've got a number of other US patents which are being filed, which I'm hoping to get issued one day. But it takes a long time for a patent to it takes a long time for to get submitted, and then you have to wait many years, like a sausage machine, and hopefully it will come out the other end. It's always astounds me that and I have to pinch myself how lucky I've been in my career to have the experiences to be able to do this, because to have an idea that you think, wow, that's unique enough to become a patent, and it's just like such a thrill. There isn't many things that in my career that I can look and go, wow, I never saw that coming. From the time of being a COBOL developer and then moving into 4GLs to actually having some ideas that are going to outlive me. They'll be on the US statute book of patents.
Yeah. But you talk about patents, or US we call patents. But I also have applied to some when I was at IBM, and IBM is always great on encouraging employees to file for patents. So I did that, but the closest I got to, like you said, right? We did it many years. It seems like finally the one that actually moved a little bit, but it says, oh, somebody already had that similar thing. So then we got some partial points, so to speak, and instead of fully, being recognized as another patent. So, but it is very difficult to get. It's not.
I guess. Working for a storage vendor is about sort of data security, data protection. It's coming from an application point of view, from the data and the database itself. I had a different set of eyes. So a lot of my colleagues are, hardware engineers, software engineers, talking about NAND protection and the drivers in the operating system and that level of detail. And I'm coming more from the operational data side. So it's when we think of ideas, they can come from anywhere. Our engineers in all technology companies, are very creative, but sometimes you see things differently if you have different experiences. So whether that's from the application and operating system integration point of view, we all have different bits going on. So Max, I go to conferences globally and going to Nashville next month to speak at Kscope. So what are your next conferences? You said you just come back for some. Or is that you done for the year, Mary? Max, are you got anything else?
No, there will be a couple of events. Talking about my own open source community events here in Munich for the Kubernetes community days and others around Europe.
Okay, was you in KubeCon recently?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Will you be in KubeCon? There's KubeCon China too in Hong Kong, right? Will you be in that one in August? You'll be in
No,
that
no.
one. Oh, not that one.
No, no.
Okay.
There was a cute one in North America as well, wasn't there? As the Americans say, in the fall.
In the end of the year.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
But I think you were talking about patents, and I think that it's actually a good starting point also to look into like emerging technologies, because somewhere they need to come from, right? And so maybe you can catch a little bit here the curve towards this topic, how emerging technologies integrated into DevOps can kick on, move on, push some transformational changes in an organization. In our short preparation, we talk about like, how does it actually looks like? What is actually an emergent technology, right? Because it might look for everyone different. So my thought on that was like looking into the Gartner hype cycle, because it's like most of the time the source of the truth, at least for decision takers. And at the moment, there's just the version from last year out, and which is kind of interesting, especially in the space where we are working here with DevOps. And talking about DevOps, a few topics highlighted there are things like platform engineering, internal developer platforms, GitOps, advanced FinOps practices, and so on. For obvious reason, also some good stuff around AI, but nothing very concrete, nothing very what you can touch, right?
Yeah.
And I found this kind of an interest direction to see, because on the one hand side, I believe AI is not that far advanced that it's really on the top of its hype. It's maybe super hyped, but it's not that useful. While other topics which are predicted to be influential in just 4 to 5 years, like GitOps, for example, I really don't understand why it just takes 4 or 5 years, because practically with most all of our customers, we implement GitOps all day long. And it's more like the state of the art rather than the future whatever topic. What's your perspective on that?
Mary, do you want to go for that?
Yeah, well, let me think a little bit too. That's a very good question. Like in terms of, I think say, for Gen AI side, right? For AI side is basically, I look at, you mentioned about GitHub, but there's also all the models that needs to be shared, so to speak. And there's Hugging Face, which is sort of like the GitHub kind of conceptually, I think, like for GitHub for all the source code repository, then on Gen AI side would be Hugging Face that hosts a lot of the LLMs and models for people to do it. But that's kind of interesting too, and so that's what I can kind of think of at this point to kind of talk about this. And let me think a bit too about this. And and how about you, Ron? Right?
Yeah, I think even in the DevOps side, it's interesting to see people have rebadged themselves. From for a DevOps engineer to an SRE to a platform engineer, and we sometimes use words, and they have different meaning, different countries, different industries. Somebody's a DevOps engineer, maybe a DevOps engineer cuts more code than an SRE, who's more interested in automation tools. But I think there is a coming together, and I think we sometimes think of AI as something which is in one little box. We think large language models and RAG, but it's going to be across the whole of our industry. So maybe you mentioned there, the change control, the GitHub equivalent for models, and then you have standards for the models and how you can distribute them. And then there is the vector databases, which and that's just another vector type, a data type, and they're going to probably end up in our traditional databases. So the open source community leads the way very often. Pinecone, and some of these all in the cloud solutions.
That's right.
But the traditional enterprise technology companies like Oracle, Microsoft, IBM, they very quickly look at what Red Hat's doing, what HashiCorp's doing, and are able to take that and make it available to the masses. And I think this is when it stops becoming a hype and a topic which is of interest to a few people, to an emerging technology which is available to everyone. I think that's the difference. When it's becomes emerging, it's available. It's availability. So there was, and I think that happens a lot quicker than it used to. With cloud platforms, whether that be Google, Azure, AWS, services can be spun up really quickly, and then something can go from 100 users to 1,000 users to 10,000 users in a matter of weeks. And we see different libraries being adopted really fast, and I guess accessibility to the code. Open source community, so many people are so generous with what they develop and make it available. So today I can go to Olivia's website and I can download whole tutorials to create a RAG solution on my laptop. And it's just incredible, really, that I can use open source tools like Brew and Podman on my laptop to create virtual machines and run containers. And all of this is available to use. So whereas maybe the adoption curve was always stranglehold by a few people that had licenses, now actually anyone that wants to learn, anyone wants to experience it, anyone in industry and academia, students, they can embrace technology and learn, and we can learn by doing, which is the most powerful way of learning. So I think it's an interesting space, AI. I think it's moving to the emerging. It's no longer a fad. It's no longer hype. It's a real. What I don't think has been agreed is what is the standard. We saw that, I guess, with like automation. The early adopters, maybe your Chef, your Puppet, your Salt, maybe they created the market, and then Ansible became the dominant player. And Terraform become very dominant in that space as well. So there was always one or two technologies that gain traction, and then they snowball and get bigger and bigger. And I'm not sure what will be the major players in AI going forward, but it's an interesting space to watch.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And which impact do you see in the organization? What does it change? What does it have an impact on?
I think organizationally, if we think there's technology and platforms to do the work, there's also the people. And the people are the hardest ones. So I think what we're seeing very quickly is, and we had this with like big data and analytics, it was done by the data scientists, the people that actually understood the algorithms, and we're seeing that in AI initially. And you had to be a really good Python developer and really good data scientist to be able to do this. Now, I think with open source and the way it's been shared and presented, you don't have to be that PhD student now to do AI. That's the bit that's changed. I think it's become accessible. Like everyone can use Linux. You don't have to know the Linux kernel inside out.
Sure.
If you want to contribute to it, then you do. But if you just want to consume it and speak about the features and work within that environment, you can be you can do amazing things with Bash scripting. You don't have to write C++ and Ada and other programming language to and compile the kernel to do that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and I agree with it too. In terms of like, I kind of tend to, because I come from more application or software development. So I look at it like we're looking at this whole software. People just say Gen AI, but there are actually many layers to how to make things work. You have that infrastructural layer, which doesn't go away. And I think that's where I think this discussion panel will be kind of focusing on, is on that layer, the DevOps. How do you actually make things happen? And of course, I think what is wowing people is really the top layer. That's kind of the results of like ChatGPT, like generating an essay, writing, a prose or something, and producing a piece of music and doing text to image, all of these things kind of wowing people. But what is kind of going underneath, I think all of these layers actually kind of boring if you kind of think of it as compare, right? Not as glamorous as all of these fancy things people can do stuff, but actually underneath we know there are a lot of mechanical things that needs to happen, like even data that comes in, you need to come in and sort them. Machine learning, you need to do, the pre-training stuff, and that's a whole set of stuff. I think the pre-training, I think that's where I'm kind of interested in finding out ML ops, right? This new kind of practice of DevOps kind of extending into the machine learning space, like ML ops. And what about the pre-training? Is it possible to kind of do continuous? You have new data coming in and do continuous training of your model, but I think it will be very expensive because as such it needs so much GPUs, and even with GPUs it takes days, weeks, to kind of produce a model. So that part I'm kind of curious to see, can we kind of do real-time kind of training? But I think I asked the question to some executive and they just avoid it because it's very expensive, first of all, to do training. And then the other part is taking the model to do inferencing, which is to apply the models to actually solve problems. And that's what kind of produce all the exciting things that people are finding like, oh, ChatGPT, let's chat with the bot and look at all the results, it's completed all the chat stuff. And so anyway, there are like so many layers of stuff. So people are all saying I'm working on ChatGPT. It can be a data scientist who doesn't know how to code. And there's also data engineer, AI engineer who are developing the implementing libraries for you to use and that type of stuff. So I think it's just a whole kind of ecosystem, very complex. But as far as DevOps, I think it has to become making it easy for people to deploy without them knowing all the layers of the details. So yeah,
I think anyone has a DevOps background is going to be and continue to be important in an organization.
Yeah.
I was at Oracle Cloud World, fortunate to be there last year, and Larry Ellison, one of his keynotes, said that that the next generation of software will be machine generated. The reason being is when you have humans creating code, there's always bugs, there's always security vulnerabilities.
Sure.
And by having machine generated code, it's going to be a lot more reliable, a lot more repeatable. So I think there is that change on the output side. I think what we'll see is the need to make something simple. There's lots of complexity behind it. And this is where the automation, the ways of working, the DevOps principles. I mean, we've extended DevOps to be DevSecOps, hasn't we? Because it's not just development and operations. We also need to have security in there. I don't think security is embedded in AI yet. I think that's something that we need to grasp. But the data pipelines, when we talk about ML ops, I think it's very similar to what we've already been doing, because ultimately we start with some data, we process it, we store it, and we retrieve it. And then we have to automate the platforms to do that piece of work.
Yeah, but this is a very interesting direction, because it's somehow a kind of funny coincidence. Like, operating platforms would be actually, at least when you think about cloud native platforms, because they are usually generated to state files, they're very, you always compare like how they should be and how you get there and so on. That's all existing, but there's not enough data or not enough environments where you can train on any AI at the moment, because companies don't want to share the access to it, right?
Yeah.
For code, it's simple, because you have hundreds of thousands of millions of open source projects where people have put in the best practice how to write software. So you can train on that a Copilot and make it as good as possible. But operating a platform, operating pipelines, and then the software on top of it, that's very unique and specific per organization. If you implement one approach for one company and you want to transfer it to another company, it might doesn't work that well. Maybe from fixing the things around it, but not from the perspective of like be implemented, integrated into the process of an organization.
Yeah.
I think the focus will change from the training, which won't be done because it's very expensive, won't be done very often. There's only be a few large organizations that have the volume of data to be able to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And we will standardize on a number of models, which will be licensed and we will consume. But then I think it's the RAG that every individuals will be using, and organizations, retrieval augmented generation, to take the models and extend it with your own data set. For every organization, their own corporate data is their competitive advantage. Mm-hmm. And they won't want to give that away and share that with other organizations. And then there is the models. Then we're going to have the moral dilemma of models. Mm-hmm. Whether that be they have social or political or mm-hmm. Different influences on them by the people that created and the data that was used to generate them in the first place. So the bias that can be built into machine learning. I think we haven't had these challenges before in technology. We haven't had a computer saying no. This is what the answer should be, because we as humans we've always determined that. So it's going to be an interesting period over the next 10 years.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I can definitely see the security DevSecOps will be actually very important, because you could be working with data, and if we don't know, if there are always hackers out there looking for ways. So if there are all these data flowing, from one things to another, or the agents, right? We talk about that process data, they're flowing through the pipeline, and if it's not secure, then it could be easily be kind of exploited, right, by people who are malicious. It could be too.
Organizations, if you have a model and it's designed for travel.
That's true.
And it was sponsored by an airline. Maybe it's always going to recommend flying over rail. It could be influences in the models we don't see.
Yeah.
The ghost in the machine.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then we have the other part that we talk about in AI is the machines creating data, interpreting data incorrectly.
Yeah.
Hallucinations. Which is a really big challenge. Yes. Where we've given it a partial data set or 95% of the data set, but that missing 5% means that it can come up with the wrong answer.
Yeah, true. Yeah. That's what I'm thinking too, is that, we can have robot and doing things and generating data and all that, but all that, is it being ensured that it is encrypted, for example, when it travels, when it sends back the information, all of these things, and all of these, I think, needs to be, or maybe there are already organizations working on that level of details, I'm sure, to kind of making sure that, data that's being sourced from everywhere, are they secure, if especially when they kind of flow through. I'm always kind of thinking of, from one system to another, there are always ways of kind of attackers coming in and attack and steal them, or however way it can be done. Maybe if it's not encrypted and all of these things. So
I think the end-to-end communications we can be secure and we can be confident with. Where I think and lots of governments are struggling in this at the moment. And there was an AI summit last year where heads of states got together, and they realised that. They have lost control. They won't know what's inside these models. They won't know how these recommendations have been generated, whether that be CIA or MI5 or other bodies. That they're used to being able to know and understand data and track it. So I think maybe people that are creating models are going to have to under license and maybe. Share how they've come up with these results. I mean, I guess with the US elections going on this year, there will be lots of people saying, "Well, are you being influenced by a machine,
that's
by
right.
an algorithm?"
That's right, exactly. Yeah.
Maybe it's a time for a good question for the audience to get to know, like, what are your emerging technologies that you see most influential, maybe beside AI, towards the organization, and how it transforms the DevOps process and procedures and teams. Hopefully someone will answer on that. And let's see, because it takes some time.
So while people are thinking about that, what technology is your one? What is the what you said you spend a lot of time working in the cloud native space. So what is the emerging technology there that you think people should be interested in or take notice of?
I think there's no very simple and easy answer, because it's more like the whole evolution of the whole tech space. I believe that we have, on the one hand side, a problem with the people being heavily overloaded by too many technologies and too many things someone needs to know to implement something. Speaking here of cognitive load, there's millions of tools around it, and if you work for a large enterprise, then you talk about 2-3 cloud providers, different platforms, and so on. So the whole zoo around it is too much. On the same side, you have like a demographic change. You will see that like 20% of the current existing market of people working in companies will retire within the next years, and this will grow up to 30-40%, which is insane when you think about how many people go until 2030 into their pension and have done their duty, right? While on the same time, we have a very shortcoming on people entering this space and really interested in working on it. So there's a lot of like a human factor around it, which in my opinion will force us to rethink a lot of concepts. I don't believe that running cloud or infrastructure like we did it the last 30 years is actually useful. It's no one cares that you need to set up like still a network and you need to set up your VPC and whatsoever. It's like, why you have to do it? That's the most stupid, simple thing. Why not just a platform can decide it for you, right? You don't need to spend time and money and effort on it. And still, it's like in the when we see cloud migrations, it's one of the biggest amount of time and money where an organization spend on is like, how do I get to the cloud? And it's like, why we still need to discuss this, right? You set up your virtual data center like you have set up your physical data center. Yes, it is faster. It doesn't take 3 years. It just takes 6 months, but still it's too long for whatever you're going to do in some way. So I believe the whole space will change towards that. We will see more like federated platforms, really unified entry points for pushing workload somewhere. You will give the parameters to it, telling what is important for you. Where are your audience located at? Do you consider sustainability as relevant for your workload? Do you are cost driven? Is latency a topic? And then the platform will just figure out what is the best place to host it, right? Things like that. So I think overall, it's a combination of many of topics. As said in the beginning, you have all the automation parts. You have maybe enhancements through AI. You have a more deeper visibility of the applications, even if they're highly distributed, things like that. So it's a very broad field which needs all over together move somewhere else. Else I see there's a really big problem to keep up with the development of what is expected from most corporations putting out there some products.
Yeah, I see similar challenges. I think with infrastructure as a service, platform as services have provided great foundations. Database as a service and software as a service have given us that experience. Well, we don't have to worry about the infrastructure; we just run and care about the application. But there isn't that overall solution. It doesn't get stitched together. So yeah, it's still a frightening experience having to set up your network and your security in the cloud, and that that loss of control, which some people fear when they go all into the cloud. I mean, I see people working more, and I think what we will see is where people went maybe all in for one cloud, maybe stepping back because realising that they're using the most appropriate cloud for the right services and for the most application. So it's all about data, it's all about application. So if you're using hosted applications, you're going to be using multiple clouds. So the multi-cloud, the interoperability between the clouds is going to become more and more a challenge, and the security around that. So I think that they're the challenges that we've got to fix over the next 10 years.
Sure.
Yeah.
So if I may ask, since I'm less involved with like infrastructural type of things, right? But anyway, I'll be curious, right, to see if, Max, you're saying that all of these, platform becomes a service, and folks don't even need to worry about it. It's an environment that we get. And so how about like, the security side, right? I feel like, okay, you may say you're managing my system, my data and all of that. I mean, the security side, is it, you think service providers are clearly understanding like the implications, right? We're a custodian of the data that we're managing for people. So are those like standardized in terms of, I need, a service, I'm using a service. Is it pretty standardized between different cloud providers, or are they pretty much, proprietary? I have my own way of managing things. So like that, right?
Yeah. Well, I think overall the large providers, but also minor ones, are usually extremely good in doing security, better than the most organization do it for yourself.
Okay.
When we implement platforms, a platform is cross-cutting through all of the technologies, and you have to integrate observability, you have to integrate security, you have to integrate the development software lifecycle passes, you have to integrate CM and so on. Most of the time, the people with the shortest amount of resources are security, and they usually don't have an idea about what are you actually doing there, right? So you need to teach them, you need to train them, and they even don't have time for that. That is not in every organization like that, but I would say in many organizations. And to believe that you nowadays can operate better, for example, a data center than any of the large providers, I really doubt it. That it's possible.
What I see is when you have that relationship with a cloud provider, it's a shared security model. So it's your data. So most clouds will say, well, it's your data. We don't want to see your data. Have a break glass approach that, they shouldn't have access to your data. But they will secure the platform and the patching of the operating system and the network equipment and the firmware, but the data from the database upwards and the application, it's down to you to secure the database, you to secure the application. So if you have application accounts which have world access, you can have the most secure infrastructure in the world, but if the application allows you to log on as a default user account and access all the data in your ERP or CRM or payroll system, that's your exposure. So we need to have good security at every layer in the technology stack.
Sure. Yeah. Very good point. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. And I think you have technologies coming up, let's say WebAssembly as a runtime, where you solve a lot of the security issues which you have, for example, in container runtime, a classic container runtime. So when we talk about introducing Kubernetes, for example, the first concern everyone comes up is like security complexity and overhead. I was like, okay, I can solve two of them. Security, in my opinion, depends on what is your requirement. Does it just needs to be hardened and the network needs to be encrypted? Easy peasy, no problem. Do I need to ensure that that no one can break into your container and break out of your container? Well, I can help you, but it's also up to you. What are you doing with your container? Because in the end, it's a very tiny virtual machine with an operating system. So as long as you have an operating system, you can always break into something. WebAssembly reduces this problem by you don't have any kind of operating system. You have just a pure binary format piece of code. So using this as a runtime for code, and it doesn't work for everything, but for a lot of stuff, would reduce already drastically the open gates, the problem for potential security break-in. And I think we will see there more and more of those topics coming up. When you talk about the host network or networking at all, eBPF is also such technology, which is going way more advanced in ensuring that not the wrong things can happen. It for sure can also provide some new approaches, but that's always the downside of it. Where you create something new, a new emergent technology, obviously there will be also some potential future problems with it. Maybe they are discovered, maybe they are undiscovered. But I think we move in this right direction. And I mean, like sitting in Europe, you often have discussions about sovereign cloud. You want to build a sovereign cloud, something which is independent and secure and so on. I like the idea. I have one problem with it. It's like 50 people, 50 companies talking about it. So what you create is not one big solution. You create isolated solutions, which all for themselves doesn't work necessarily very well, and they don't play well together. So instead of that, you put everyone into the same boat, building, for example, a big team of automation experts, of security experts, whatsoever. You separate, slice and dice it, and maybe leave like a handful of people here and 2-3 people there for setting these things up or building these things. So I think we need to find the balance overall, and that's maybe also one of my final statements for the transformational process overall for the market. We need to find the balance between like more cooperation, more sharing knowledge, and this could be also the open source path, to ensure that the single implementations are keeping advancing and not stop where they are, because then we can also just like get back our bare metal server and start working on this and hosting our whatever else applications we have.
True. Cool. So, well, looking at the time, like time goes by fast when we're having fun, right? Discussing something kind of very interesting. It looks like we have only 2 minutes left or so. And I guess for me, actually, I need to get ready for my presentation, which is like in 7 minutes.
Mary, plug your presentation. What should everyone be dialing into now?
Oh, WTO. Yeah. Okay. So I actually will be talking about introductory to generative AI, and then with some vector search. So I'm in the AI and cloud track. So if folks wants to join me there, it will be starting at the next session. I think the last session of the day. So yeah. So.
Yeah, I might join you there. It's an interesting topic. Database and Pinecone and
database, Actually, you mentioned about Ingress. Yeah, I worked a little bit with Ingress too. That was a long time ago. So yeah, that's amazing. So yeah, Informix and Ingress, and those were the old database I worked with in the past. So yeah, okay.
So Oracle 23 AI was announced last week, and been rebadged from 23C to 23 AI, and vector databases are now, and vector search is part of the Oracle database. So with your Java skills and your Oracle Java there, we can do that together now. So we can do that whole end-to-end
ready
AI pipeline with Oracle technology.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So there's no questions in the Q&A. So if someone's got one, get it in quick. We've only got a couple of minutes left before the channel gets shut down and we have to move on. It's been a really entertaining hour with you, Max, Mary. So thank you for. I really enjoyed it, and hope we do it again next year.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you
very much,
Max. And yeah, I hope to see you both in Europe, or you come to the US. That would be fun.
I'll come to the US. That'd be nice. Okay. Give us an event. I'll turn up.
Yeah, that would be great. Yes. All right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Perfect. Have a great afternoon. See you.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.